Hello, and thank you for joining a recorded session of Payment Best Practices to Protect Your Practice. Today, we're excited to share with you some of the ways that payments has changed recently and in ways that will help you drive additional revenue to the practice while you're also ensuring that it's done in a safe and a secure manner. We have two speakers for today's call, Lisa Lebrano and Jesse Heon. They are both payment specialists with Nextech. And in that role, they're responsible for supporting its design and its implementation. And they're also very heavily involved in helping our customers establish best practices around the way that Nextech Payments is used. These are a couple of seasoned payments experts with a combined 30 years plus of payments experience between them. So I'm going to hand it off to Jesse. Jesse, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Dan. So before we look at this agenda today, I'd just like to say a few words about the payments industry as a whole. Like much of what we are involved in, payments is always going to be changing and changing rapidly. New technologies and capabilities are inevitable as time moves on, which of course is going to lead to more options for you and your patients when it comes to payments. Taking payments is a topic often overlooked in this regard because it's historically just been looked at as a commodity, something you simply need to have to run your business. But today we want to share how recent developments in the industry can be leveraged to help you meet some of those financial challenges that are common in our industry today. We'll start with a look at some of the current challenges, followed by a look at advancing trends made in the payments industry. We'll then dive deeper into the ability to save card information on file, because so much of what we can do and put into practice is enabled by that advancement alone. And then finally, as we shift to more innovative ways of accepting payments, there can be additional risk associated with these transactions. So we'll take a quick look at ways to protect your practice against fraud and chargebacks. So we'll start with emerging trends in payments, but before we do, we're going to look at a polling question that we use on our live webinars. All right, so this question here, how do you go about choosing your current processor? We're asking this question to see, make our practices think about, how did you go about this? I mean, what is the reason you're actually using the processor that you're using today? The below bullet points might apply to, all of them might apply, some of them might apply, maybe one of them applies. Really want our practices to think about how they got there. And that's kind of the moral of this question here. While we do have a various amount of answers here, typically the reason that we see is the highest chosen is that they had the lowest rates. I mean, in a lot of cases, right, when it's looked at as a commodity, why not choose someone with the lowest rates? But after looking at this presentation, we think everyone's mindsets change and standpoints will change on which processor they're choosing. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and we'll move on. Okay, so to start off, we'll look at some statistics that you may have witnessed in your own day-to-day of these payments-related challenges for our practices. And firstly, higher deductibles. So anyone who provides services that are supported by insurance knows that high deductible coverage plans are increasing in popularity. And as a result, under these types of plans, patient responsibility tends to climb. And when patient responsibility climbs, your odds of being paid on time lessen. As we see here, once we hit $1,000 in patient responsibility, chances that you get paid within your typical window for receivables drops to just 62%. And then we can also see that many of these patients are growing frustrated with their healthcare experience. Actually, 72% of patients said that they're confused by their explanation of benefits, and 70% are confused by their medical bills in regards to what they actually owe overall. So our takeaway here is that some billing systems are frustrating for patients, especially as they face increasing financial responsibility. One way that practices can respond is by making it easier to pay for their patients through multiple avenues, or just more avenues in general. Consumers in any industry actually find the amount in which they have to pay more reputable if it's assigned to them in a digital format. Therefore, with more digital avenues, we can increase the odds of payment, given that they now understand what they owe. So to recap, in instances where insurance is involved, patients on average now have higher deductibles, which severely impacts the chances they'll get paid. And even when they have every intention to pay, they're confused about what they owe. So now let's move on to the economic impact on payment behavior. All right. So the elective space has its own challenges, and the economy can surely impact our patients' decision making. And that's very true as of late, current inflated climate that we're in here in 2022. So I'd like you to think about deferred procedures given the state of the economy in recent times. In a recent study, 34.5 million consumers who would have opted for elective procedures chose to forego them in the 6 months leading up to April 2019. Now, keep in mind, that's before the pandemic, that's 6 months leading up to April 2019. Imagine what that means now for the inflated climate that we just spoke about. So what about affordability, right? Of these 34.5 million, roughly 73% of them opted out because they said they couldn't afford it. You can influence that by offering new age payments options, and statistics show that if you offer more avenues, they're going to pay more. As we just mentioned, this translates to a large lost opportunity if not properly equipped. It's essentially leaving 86.5 billion, or at least a sizable chunk of that, on the table. If you give your patients the option to pay with automatically recurring payment plans, this study indicates that 63% of those patients would be more willing to agree to those plans and set payment up front right then and there. Moral of the story, having flexible payment options, including these recurring payment plans for any sum, is a great way to convert more patients to say yes, and more importantly, to do so now. So if you're looking to drive more revenue to your business, the structure in which your patients pay has moved front and center in importance. So next, we will look at the top ways to increase revenue with our new payments innovations. All right, so number one, tipping. Giving the option to tip has become normalized because newer payments technology has enabled it to be. Estheticians, assistants, wherever that applies, might receive tips, right? But how do they receive tips? Is it cash? I mean, do people even carry cash anymore? Would your assistants, estheticians, whoever it might be more likely to receive higher tips more often if the patient's presented with an option to do so when they're paying with a credit card? Statistics give a resounding yes in this regard. Number two are memberships and subscriptions. Do you currently offer them? And if so, is it a manual process or is it actually automated for you? Even if it's automated, I mean, how easy is it to manage those? Having an easy to use management system is paramount in making sure this revenue stream is adding to your practice and not taking away from your staff's productivity. Number three, recurring payments and payment plans. This might be the most applicable, highly used application of new payments technology when you understand the value it can bring to your practice. Even if you don't carry patient balances, you surely take money in some kind of process, right? So what if you could automate that process and know when your revenue is going to hit your books? Take control of and significantly shorten your accounts receivable by automating credit card payments using this technology. Number four, a no-show fee policy. This policy can, of course, be very beneficial financially, but can also be extremely difficult to execute if you don't have the patient's card information before check-in, especially for new patients. Being able to leverage card on file technology is necessary to make these policies a success. Which leads me to my next point, number five, card on file. This is a big one. We're not going to go in depth here because Lisa is going to go further into depth on this one coming up here shortly. Number six, how about the return on investment from time savings alone? We have numerous testimonials here in Nextech alone regarding the efficiency of no longer having to double post payments, whether those be the in-office payments, the online payments, right, virtual payments. Not having to re-enter credit card information over the phone is a really cumbersome and time-consuming process. It's completely redundant. These are maybe seemingly small attributes of current payments intake processes, but overall it adds up. And overall, if you can help, lessen those, you're going to have a much better patient and staff experience. All right, number seven, fraud and chargeback monitoring. Having insight into your patient's information as well as a chargeback process can be a game changer for preventing either of these from happening. And even if you don't stop the initial chargeback, are you able to remedy the situation before the chargeback is settled? Being able to refund those funds to the original card instead of writing checks, it's going to be a lot faster. You're going to have a lot better patient experience. The odds of you having that chargeback go fully through definitely lessen. And then number 8, certainly not least, taking payments in every which way you can. I mean, the more options you have, the more likely you are to be paid. It's that simple. Give your patients more avenues to be paid. So all of these features contribute to a better conversion for you, right, the practice, but it's also a better experience for the patient as well. So one common theme you can see is that the foundation of many of these features is rooted in being able to securely keep card information on file. So Lisa's now going to walk us through how to best leverage that.
Thank you, Jesse. So there's all these recent developments in payments giving you some new options that have potential to drive revenue. But of all of them, the card on file presents the greatest opportunity for your practice. Why? Because card on file can be leveraged in a number of different ways. Next slide. Oh, poll question number 2. When it comes to saving a patient's credit card information, when we did this poll, the response to this is, I didn't know if my current payments processor offers this, was number 1. And the other most common answer was, I didn't think it was safe. So there are still many practices that haven't gone down the card on file path for any number of reasons, but card on file has grown in the industry as a common, acceptable, and even expected option. Next slide, please. Here are some card on file components. Just about everybody's familiar with the card on file. It's easy to see the benefits of having access to a payment method on file. It's also pretty easy to see how having that stored credit card can pose a risk to the cardholder and ultimately your business. Recent developments, including tokenization, have made it easy and safe to capture card on file information. So with tokenization, the card can be captured at any time, and once it's pre-authorized, all the sensitive data is stripped, and all that remains is the last 4 digits of the credit card number and the card type. The data is stored in a safe place without risk of getting hacked, and you could use that card on file token at will. But let's talk about the virtual terminal. It can be used to simplify your over-the-phone payments. By using the virtual terminal, you simply pull up the patient's account, find the payment profile, and select a payment method by choosing the card on file you have previously saved. Not only will this simple step save you time, but it will shorten the time on the phone with the patient. It will also eliminate any errors or miskeyed information because everything is pre-captured for you. Again, the benefit of having card on file. And for those practices that are still keying transactions in that credit card machine, I'm sure you're going to appreciate this. The virtual terminal eliminates the physical credit card machine. So if you're taking payments in your back office, you no longer need a physical terminal. Everything is done online virtually. And here are some other options that you can use card on file for. There's the recurring payments. Recurring payments will automatically bill your customer for goods and services. You could choose a daily, weekly, or monthly recurring payment plan for an undefined length of time. Then there's the payment plans. The payment plan is great for large ticketed items or services that you could bill monthly for smaller dollar amounts up until the total balance is completely paid in full. And then there's memberships and subscriptions, which can be offered to a group of customers that have selected products or services, and it's typically at a discount. Overall, having card on file can be used in multiple payments that you can offer your patients and generate additional revenue. which leads me to the next slide. Let's talk about card on file, which could lower your costs. So we have card on file drives revenue by enabling innovative programs such as the payment plans, recurring payments, memberships, and subscriptions, but it's also a powerful tool to help you reduce costs. It will shorten the average age of your accounts receivable. So with the card on file, you can improve your chances of collecting payments by use of automation. How? With offering payment plans, recurring payments, and your memberships. You are now in control. Card on file also is less reliant on those third-party collection agencies. Nobody really wants to send accounts to collections. The customer doesn't, and you don't want to. But with card on file, you now have another option before collections, which reduces the cost you have to pay the collection agency. And lastly, we have card on file, which mostly improves that phone payment experience with less time on the phone taking payments because you have all the data already. See the screenshot with payment profiles? Your customer can have multiple credit cards and have one marked as the preferred card. See the star next to the Discover card? That's the preferred card. So you may be concerned that having the cards on file are risky. Let's discuss the risk and mitigation on the next slide. So here we have card on files with risk and mitigations. So we understand that there is some resistance to having cards on file to set up practices, and for good reasons. It's still relatively new and we're always hearing about data breaches and fraud. And the last thing we want is to have upset customers. So let's take a moment to address some of the biggest potential risks of card on file programs. So, number one, poor customer experience. It's usually the result of a customer that doesn't know they're being charged, or when will they get charged, or the dollar amount. So what do? Well, the mitigation would be make it a policy to address this upfront with the customer. Remember, the more they are aware, the better. Number two, risk of a chargeback. If the customer isn't aware they're being charged, it leads to an additional chance of chargebacks. Well, mitigation, in a nutshell, clear communication will prevent a chargeback from happening. However, if they do, make sure you respond to that chargeback as soon as possible. Then there's number three, the account updater information can be presented as a big risk operationally. So if that card has outdated information, right, like if the credit card will expire, it creates more work over time when you have to chase down that new credit card information. Having a system that prevents that is key to preserving the card on file. So this mitigation includes Account Updater. The Account Updater is a must-have. The functionality of the Account Updater is to retrieve all the necessary fields from the issuing bank to the expiration date or new card data information like the CVV number or the zip code. The software, the Account Updater, does it for you automatically. That's huge and time savings. Last one, card data security. Having card information in your possession is an obvious risk, especially in the medical practice. Here, mitigation is tokenization is a great start, but you'll still need to treat the cardholder data in a safe way, which means never write down cardholder numbers. So there is some risk associated with card on file, but with planning, coordination, most can be avoided. Jesse will wrap us up with a quick look at chargebacks in more detail.
All right, thank you, Lisa. So to start off with the topic, we visit our third and final poll of the presentation. So for this poll question, pretty simple one. What do you believe is the most common reason for a chargeback? There's actually no right answer here. It can be spread across the board, can really vary from industry to industry or even, business to business, right? Practice to practice in our terms. But the fact of the matter is there are ways to prevent all of these from happening. And if not completely prevent it, maybe go ahead and remedy the situation on the back end. I mean, are your payments intake processes very clear and outlined? Are you giving your payments policies to the patients up front and having them sign it? A couple different ways to prevent against these, but overall, communicating with your patients in as many ways as possible and doing so clearly is going to be the best way to prevent chargebacks from happening. So with that being said, we can go ahead and move on to our chargeback causes and ways to prevent them. So number one, customer dissatisfaction. A great way to prevent that is ensuring the financial policy is clearly outlined and signed by the patient. Having a physical copy actually of your policy is a great way for someone to remember exactly what they're doing. A lot of e-forms, e-signatures out there nowadays. A physical copy of it outlined and not too much wording on the paper will make sure that they're seeing exactly what's going to happen, so they're not blindsided by charges, in which case they might try to charge it back. Secondly, fraud. How about comparing the patient name with the name on the card? So as we can see on our screen here, on the right-hand side, we have two red circles. First, top red circle around the patient's name, and then the second red circle around the cardholder's name that they're actually using. If you look at those, are they the same? Here we have John Doe's profile with Jane Doe's card being used. So having that kind of another layer of security and just checking to see if they're the same might be good to look at. And also a good segue into our next way to prevent this fraud is looking at all the cards that are used. So are patients spreading payments across multiple cards? Typically, that's a telltale sign of fraud. Third, cancellations and returns. Preventing this, how about we provide a clear and written verbal communication regarding billing, including when our memberships and subscriptions are being renewed. Like we said earlier, no one likes to be blindsided with payments, and if they don't know where it's coming from, they might charge it back. Next, a lack of clear and responsive communication is typically a cause of a chargeback. So a way we can prevent this, using a clear billing descriptor. So think about how charges show up on a patient's credit card statement. If they don't recognize it, they're probably going to charge it back. So especially if you have multiple locations, making sure that each location has a clear billing descriptor attached to it. And then finally, processing errors, a big one too. Might have duplicate payments here. On the back end, being able to settle with the customer via a refund. Checks are slow, so if they get paid now and get paid what they should get paid now, much less likely to take further action and not actually follow through with the chargeback. So now that we discussed some ways to prevent chargebacks, let's recap about what we talked about today. Okay, so being involved in an industry like payments that's constantly changing, staying up to date and ahead of these technological and consumer trends is pretty vital in running an efficient practice. We know as patient responsibility increases, you should always be looking for creative, convenient, and expansive ways to drive payments, which in effect is going to capture more revenue for you. At the top of this list, being able to leverage card on file. Those capabilities are the most comprehensive and effective option to take advantage of. Keeping card information on file securely enables you to automatically take recurring payment plans. Also take quick transactions over the phone and reduce redundancy in the front office. All of these, again, leading to a better run practice and a better overall experience for the patient. As we most recently discussed, utilizing card on file technology does translate to more card not present transactions, which currently and historically means more fraud and chargeback activity. So communicating with your patients through various methods is going to be critical in safeguarding your practice while staying ahead of the curve still. So to conclude our webinar, we'd like to give you some more information about Nextech payments, show you what we've offered, and thank you for attending the webinar.
So as discussed, you now know Nextech Payments drives revenue. This isn't a commercial, but we'd be remiss if we didn't give you an opportunity to hear about our payment plan. Well, it's fully integrated. Our payment platform is embedded into your current software. How convenient is that? You could pull up your patient's information and create credit card transaction while you're in their profile. And do you currently take Care Credit? Well, guess what? We recently integrated Care Credit into Nextech as well. So what does that mean? Care Credit is now an option in your software. No more signing into another separate website or remembering another password. While you're in Nextech software, you could simply click on Care Credit and your payment can be made. It's that easy. We are currently the only company in the industry that is integrated with Care Credit. And within our first month, half of our patients' practices have already migrated to us. But if you don't currently have Care Credit today and you'd be interested in accepting it, we can assist you with getting that set up too. Yes, another way for you to generate additional revenue. So our integrated payments is very easy to set up and used. We have an implementation team that will contact you. It's simple and it will take about an hour. Also, our payments will decrease costs and increase your revenue. As we discussed, ways such as the card on file feature, we are here to give you the value to increase and drive revenue. Lastly, it's absolutely no risk. Nextech doesn't have an early termination fee. You could cancel at any time. But here's a little history. Nextech payments started in the beginning of 2021. We currently have over 800 active practices, and we continue to grow in the industry. Why? Because we continue to be relevant and expand our offers to you, the practices. Recently, we just started offering Derm Pro, which is a turnkey e-commerce solution. In addition, we offer a robust reporting, all at your fingertips. No more toggling between other third-party processors' websites to obtain your statements, transactions, or batch information. We have it all in one. Remember, Nextech saves you time and generates revenue. So you could contact your Nextech representative for more information and for your next steps. Dan?
Thank you, Jesse and Lisa. That concludes the webinar for today's session. We appreciate your time. And again, contact your Nextech representative for additional information.